now please stand as you are able in body or in spirit for the gospel readings, which today comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 8, verses 1 through 11. You can find that on page 100 in the New Testament of your Pew Bible. Then each of them went home, while Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Early in the morning, he came again to the temple. All the people came to him, and he sat down and began to teach them. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery and made her stand before all of them. They said to him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now, the law of Moses commanded us to stone such a woman. Now, what do you say?" They said this to test him, so that they might have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger in the ground. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let anyone among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." And once again, he bent down and wrote on the ground. When they heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the elders, and Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. Jesus straightened up and said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, sir." And Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go your way, and from now on, do not sin again." This is the gospel of the risen Christ. Thanks be to God. You may be seated.
Thank you, choir. So we're going to dig a little deeper today into this marvelous story of Les Miserables in looking at the character of Jean Valjean. Jean Valjean, as we, in our overview last week, remind ourselves that Jean Valjean was convicted of a crime of stealing a loaf of bread to feed his sister and his nephew. They were suffering under the hardships at the time, had little or nothing to eat, and seeing this, Jean Valjean steals this loaf of bread. He's sentenced to 5 years in prison. But the nature of Jean Valjean was one that he was always seeking to escape. And as a result of that, a further 14 years is added to his sentence. 14 years of hard labor, 14 years under the gaze of one who would refuse to use his name and simply referred to him as prisoner 24601. Javert, who was the overseer, Javert, who was the one who, well, next week we'll look at him in more detail, but the one who oversaw what was going on in that chain gang, refused to acknowledge, in a sense, the humanity, the personhood of this individual. Something which echoes into today's world, where at times it is difficult for those incarcerated to be recognized as who they are or what they are as human beings, but simply numbers in a system. But after 19 years, Javert, over, I guess, his embarrassment, has to say to Jean Valjean, "Okay, off you go. But remember this. These are your parole papers. These are the things that you are going to have to hold on to for the rest of your life that remind you who you are. You are an ex-con. Your life from here on out, as far as Javert was concerned, was going to be defined by what had occurred some 19 years earlier. And I guess for Valjean, that in a sense had been indoctrinated into him. He had seen firsthand what the system did to those who were incarcerated. He had been dehumanized. He'd been treated appallingly. And even on his release, he is reminded that he is not, as it were, a member of society, but one who is marked out as different. He goes to try and find work, and no one wants him. He's carrying these papers that says he is a convict. He goes to find a source of living, food, and no one will serve him. He goes to find shelter, and no one will give him a room. There is no room in the inn, as it were, for one like him. How sad it is. How sad it is that even in today's world, there are those who are leaving prison having met the requirements of their sentence and still find it difficult to be accepted by the society around them, still find it difficult to get a job that will bring them income that will allow them to get back into the way that society seeks for them to be. In the film and in the book, in the end, Jean Valjean goes and lays at the door of a church. He's going to spend the night there. And then there is this encounter that would change his life forever. I'm going to invite our choir director, Rory, to come to the pulpit microphone here and share with you how the musical version of the book tells this part of the story. The priest, Monsignor Bienvenu, finds Jean Valjean in the doorway, and he has this to say to him, or rather, sing to him.
Come in, sir, for you are weary, and the night is cold out there. Though our lives are very humble, what we have to share. There is wine here to revive you. There is bread to make you strong. There's a bed to rest till morning, rest from pain and rest from wrong.
So Jean Valjean takes up the hospitality which is offered to him. He goes in and spends the night with the clergy gathered there, with the family, as it were, of the church who were present, and he takes his fill of the food that's offered to him. He's restless in the bed. But prisoner 24601 is still eating at his soul. You see, this is the first time in all of those years, this is the first time that he has encountered one who has seen him for who he is, who calls him brother, who does not judge him for what he has been, but sees him for who he is. A member of the family of God. But prisoner 24601 still struggles with that which is inside him. And in the book, we see that does he not only get up and go and find the silver that is there in the chapel or wherever it is that they are, but he is heard. And the priest comes out, bienvenue, which of course, if you know French, means welcome. The priest of welcome finds him. And Jean Valjean knocks him to the ground, hits him so hard that he falls almost unconscious. And he makes his escape. He's only gone a matter of hours, as it were, before he is again encountering the police, who, asking for his papers, remember his parole papers, the ones who defined him what he is, asking for them, they recognize and see in this bag that he has, this sack, the silver. And they take him back. They take him back to the priest. They throw him before the priest and say, "Sir, we have brought him back." And he had the audacity to say, "You gave him this silver." I'm going to let Rory pick up the story again as we hear the priest's response.
But my friend, you left so early, surely something slipped your mind. You forgot I gave these also, would you leave the best behind? So, messieurs, you may release him, for this man has spoken true. I commend you for your duty, and God's blessing go with you. But remember this, my brother. See in this some higher plan. You must use this precious silver to become an honest man. By the witness of the martyrs, by the passion and the blood, God has raised you out of darkness. I have bought your soul for God.
I have bought your soul for God. Raised you out of darkness into God's eternal light. It's a moment both of conviction and conversion. A moment where Jean Valjean's heart is absolutely stabbed by the power of God's love in and through the character of the priest. But it's at this point, in a sense, that both the film and the book diverge. The 1,400 pages of the book take us into more of the story than perhaps the film versions or the musical allows us. We see that there is a constant battle in Jean Valjean. Even as he loses that, there is a daily struggle. We all have those moments in a sense when we can look back and perhaps see in our lives a moment where the purpose we have in this life becomes clear to us. A moment, and it might be moments, not just a moment, but a moment that we look back and say, I know what God wants of me. I know what it is that I have to do. And it is a daily struggle. And for Jean Valjean, 24601 was still at work within him, even as he seeks to take that which is gifted to him. Not just the silver that he had stolen, but the 2 candlesticks which are added to it. 2 candlesticks that would remain a reminder to him for the rest of his life of that which was precious and given to him. For me, it's a bit like a marriage, or at least a contract that we have with people. In a marriage, we vow to one another. We make vows to honor, to care for. But we do not love because we make vows. We make vows because we love. I don't know if you're in a relationship now, in a marriage, or in some relationship that you've been in a long time. But I have to say, I don't get up every morning and go, what's the vow I've got to keep today? Am I going to honor? Am I going to care for? Am I going to, no, I won't say obey, because that might get a little bit tricky for some of us. But I don't consciously think of those vows and think, oh, this is how I must shape my day. No. I care today because I love my wife. And love shows that the rules only allow us to expand and grow. You see, this is for me one of the fundamental things that come out of this encounter with Jean Valjean and the grace of God. And the grace that we can all extend to each other. Grace comes at a cost. For the priest, in one sense, it was a monetary cost. He had just given away all the silver. But for grace to be extended, there is a cost to the one who gives it. An emotional cost. A real cost in terms of living day by day. A real cost, as we know from the story of Jesus, that in the end, one must give a life. So cost comes as a motivator in a sense, because it is the provider of grace who offers. And we are reminded every time. And throughout his life, Jean Valjean would encounter opportunities for his faith to be tested, his grace extended to him to be challenged. Would it be 24601, or would it be the new Jean Valjean? The encounters that he has, the new life he has had, where he's torn up those papers and thrown them away and taken on a new identity, is challenged. It's challenged because Javert finds his way back into his life. The moment where someone is pinned underneath a wagon outside the factory that Jean Valjean now owns. And because of his strength, he lifts the wagon and they pull the person out. And Javert sees it and thinks, there's only one guy I knew who had that strength. Or the opportunity where Fantine is dying, and we'll meet Fantine in 2 weeks' time. And Jean Valjean, recognizing that she was once in his employ, says that he will take on her daughter and raise him as his own. Or the opportunity when she is walking the streets having had to sell herself to make ends meet, and Javert is going to take her to prison, and he intercedes on her behalf and says, no, let me deal with this. There are all these opportunities in the story. Even to the point, and we'll pick up on this more next week, where Javert and Jean Valjean meet each other head to head. But in all of these cases, his grace extended to him is tested. Will he accept that gift that has been given to him and honor that gift, or will he walk away? And then there comes a moment when Javert tells him that they've arrested Jean Valjean and he's going to trial. And Jean Valjean agonizes with himself, saying, who am I? Because I could walk away from this, and no one would be the wiser, and this person would go, and I would be in the free. My name would be cleared. Or he can go to court and stand up and say, I am the one. I am prisoner 24601. But then there comes another challenge. Having raised Cosette as his daughter, a love interest appears, Marius. And again, Jean Valjean is tested. His grace is tested. I mean, I think it's fair to say that he wasn't all that surprised. She was a beautiful girl. But he didn't want to lose her. He didn't want to have to let her go. And Marius was drawing her away from him. Do you know that there is someone in this world today who is singing of you? Bring them home. Doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you have done. It doesn't matter where you have been. There is one in this world who is singing for you. Bring him or her or they or them home. Bring them home. And Jesus, who is singing that song, has those words in his mind as well, I'm sure. If I die, then let them live. Bring them home. That is God's grace offered to us all freely and willingly. If only we would accept it, if only we would be the ones to say yes to what is given for us. Loving God, recognizing that it is by your grace that we are called your children. Recognizing it is by your forgiveness that we are set free. May we leave this place in the knowledge that it is indeed your strength that supports us, your love that comforts us, and that your Spirit guides us now and forevermore.